Hello, everyone. Hi, can y'all hear me?
Hey, yeah, okay.
Hi.
Hear you.
All right. Welcome to another episode of MBKCares Wellness Wednesday. It's great to have you here. Tonight we have a phenomenal lineup of panelists. We also have one of MBKCares executive officers or board members here with us, Lamar Dixon. Tonight's discussion is going to be about art therapy. Many of you have been following along with our discussions over the last few months. We started in April during the early stages or early phases of the pandemic quarantine period. And my brother, Eric Marsh, and I, who's also an executive board member of MBK Cares, we decided to take our community conversations that we were doing at the public library into a virtual space and talk about how we were struggling as African American men, just dealing with our mental health or the fear of what the pandemic was presenting to us. So from that came these ideas to do Wellness Wednesdays. We've talked about finance, we talked about fatherhood, homeschooling, so many different dynamics to life that impact one of our biggest issues, which is mental health, or biggest concerns of mental health. So tonight is no different. We want to have a discussion about art therapy. And this is different than just art. This is about how art is used in therapeutic ways in order to improve our quality of life and our mental health. So I'm going to pass the mic on to my brother, Lamar Dixon. And then after that, we're going to have each of our guests introduce themselves. We have Kathryn Snyder, Sean Plunkett, Jenni Graham, and Brittany Knapp. So with no further ado, Lamar Dixon.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Like Ihsan said, my name is Lamar, and I'm an executive board member of MBK Cares. Just to continue the dialogue, to have to continue our pursuit in improving our mental health. And it goes into different steps, and this is just another one. So tonight, just like Ihsan said, we're going to talk about art therapy, and we're going to talk about how, why art therapy, and how it'll help heal. So the first person we're going to introduce is Kathryn. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what organization you're affiliated with.
Gladly, and thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Kathryn Snyder. I have run a private practice called Parent to Child here in Philadelphia for about 15 years. And I also run a nonprofit offshoot arm called Spark Art Therapy to be able to provide art therapy services in public schools locally.
Okay. Thank you. Sean?
I'm Sean Plunkett. Right now, I'm just being. Honestly, I'm not really affiliated with anything right now because of all the stuff that's happening. I kind of just want to take some time and space, but I've worked in various institutions and hospitals. I've worked in private practice, worked at universities, and I've worked as a clinical supervisor and director. I've done pretty much a lot of everything. But right now, just being.
Gotcha. Thank you. Jenni?
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. My name is Jenni Graham. I'm an art therapist, a therapeutic coach, and the CEO of Trauma Free University. And at Trauma Free University, we help change agents with marginalized racial and or gendered identities to achieve empowered healing and emotional freedom to go from surviving to thriving in all areas of life. And I've been working, in mental health since 2005, also in a variety of different settings with diverse populations of people. And my whole thing is about how to integrate transformative social justice with mental and emotional wellness.
Thank you. Brittany?
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Brittany. I'm an artist, activist, and art therapist, and I founded my private practice, but also it's a exhibition space and workshop space, art therapy place. And I have involvements working with the Jails Action Coalition, doing visual campaigns as an artist, and making artwork for rallies and exhibiting in group exhibitions that deal with incarceration and sexual violence, as well as currently working at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York in the inpatient psychiatric unit. But I'm currently stationed in Bushwick, Brooklyn with my private practice as many days as I can be.
So my first question for the panel is, does someone have to have formal art skills or experience to participate in art therapy? Anyone can answer.
No, absolutely not. I always start by saying, obviously people who have skills or are drawn to art, we know what a natural place it is to express things and to find ourselves. But I always love when people can come to it fresh and really take a risk to just make some marks and find some joy and pleasure and relaxation and starting to delve into that imaginal and creative process.
Yeah, it's literally, I tell people, it's just lines, shapes, and colors. I mean, if you think about any artwork, it is literally just lines, shapes, and colors. And that's all we use in this space, because like we're not art teachers. We're not teaching you specific art skills or anything like that. It's really just how do you use the expression of line, shapes, and colors, whether it's the actual product or sometimes just the process of creating and manipulating of art materials, and how we use that to like communicate and express our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences. And there's no right or wrong way. Mistakes are welcome. But it's just line, shapes, and colors, and anybody can engage in that. Stick figures are okay.
So like if let's just say like I'm curious about art therapy and I want to learn more about art therapy. Like what would like an initial consultation look like?
Who wants to jump in?
Oh, doesn't matter.
I want to hear from Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll look like, so I think one of the biggest misconceptions about art therapy is that it's something really different than therapy. All it really is therapy with a tool. So that means the biggest part of it is going to be like how you connect with a person. So usually when I do a consultation, I'll just talk to someone first. I won't even get into the art or anything like that, because what I want to see is like, can we connect? And then after the first session, you just start to kind of build your vocabulary. That means like, what are you interested in? A lot of it is talking, and eventually you hit on something where you can kind of use that to create something 3D or flat or artistic or something. It can be something that can make you feel more comfortable, because a lot of people are able to talk more when they start creating art, because they stop being so nervous about what, some stranger looking at you or whatever. But I think it could also just be an organic something that you're just playing with in your hand. There's no set way, but it depends on what you bring to the table. But I think behind that is just the fact that like whenever we say the word art, it can literally be anything. So every person's session will look different, but it'll be connecting, talking, and then eventually you'll figure out, does this work? And then from there, the person that is the client, actually, the way that I do it is they actually lead. So you'll figure something out, but it's going to be a process of collaboration. It's not going to be me telling you what to do.
Brittany?
Yeah, on that, I agree with Sean. I most of the time in a consultation or in the beginning session, will just ask some questions, but a lot of it, I tell my clients that, the first session and, any subsequent sessions that they would like to say are, their trial, I guess, period. I tell them that they're interviewing me for the position, right? Because it's the client's job, or they should decide what's best for them and what, who they want to share their emotions with and their experiences with. And so, yeah, that's kind of my perspective on the initial consultations, giving them the opportunity, to get to know me. Or if I was supposed to chime in and continue and elaborate on that I agree, but also, the interview thing.
That was great. I actually had an opportunity to participate in an art therapy event that you hosted online. So I wanted to transition this because I know some of the work that you do and some of the work that Jenni does has to do with using the virtual space in order to connect with the audience that you may not be able to meet with in public spaces now, or in secluded spaces. I just wanted you to talk about like, how has that been connecting with people? I would like Jenni and Brittany to answer that. How has that been connecting with people in virtual spaces? And have you seen the same opportunities to connect with people?
It's different. I feel like, especially with like my private practice and shifting that into virtual, just like with the individual participants I've been working with, you kind of lose something and gain something at the same time. There is a difference in terms of like the energetic connection, or the intuitive connection, because I can't pay attention to a person's like full sense of their body language. If they're creating art in the session, I can't really notice and observe like how they're going about that process in the way I could in person. But on the flip of that, I have found it's been interesting because people can bring in aspects of themselves that they wouldn't have access to if they were in my office, because they're home and they'll tell me about something, like, oh, I'm gonna go get this, or like, I have this thing I want to show you, or just to see somebody like in the comfort of their own space. I feel like that has created a different level of intimacy where people are a lot more open or like comfortable to share parts of themselves. So it's been cool and interesting, but very different. And I also like the fact that I feel like I've been incorporating more like in-home found objects in a lot of the art practices, because, you know, everyone doesn't necessarily have art materials at home, but there are so many things that we can use to be creative with them. So like what Sean even said earlier, that like anything can be used as like art, anything can be used to create like imagery or to create an assemblage of like a virtual like visual area. So it's cool to like get people to incorporate things that are like actually in their home, and you just gain so much insight on a person in that way too.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely positives and negatives. Jenni, with what you're saying, I've gotten like virtual tours of people's houses, you know, on the individual level, which, and you know, here's this artwork I made for this experience. And that's been really cool, where like individually clients have been able to say, how about this is a period of my life when I did this, you know, and that's not something necessarily that you would get to see otherwise. So I agree with Jenni on that point. And some of the limitations, things that I feel like are relationship building within a group setting or like a group workshop, is even just filling up somebody's water, you know, that they're using for paint, like having that, I guess, servitude and like being there for the clients, the needs in a physical sense is a very important part of the process for our therapists that unfortunately we miss out on to a large extent there. I think personally the most positive, I would say, I think that the most positive element of doing this group kind of groups or individual sessions over online, which a lot of insurances don't let you do individual sessions with someone out of state, so it wouldn't apply to that. But in doing group sessions, like now we're able to do them maybe a little bit more internationally and bring in Ihsan, you were able to join. That would not have been a possibility probably in the art therapy place space. So expanding the breadth and getting our clients now having the opportunity to hear from people of different backgrounds and from different regions that they might not otherwise have not been able to contribute to that conversation, especially during a time whenever we're dealing with so much conflict within this country and so much discrimination and the struggles that are being dealt with, like with the LGBTQ communities and immigrant communities and Black communities in our country. Being able to get the external perspectives from outside of the country and from other regions has been, I think, helpful for the clients.
Brittany, before Lamar's going to shift over, I wanted to actually interject a thought that lined up with what you just were saying. Like during this pandemic, one of the things that MBKCares was doing for the last year, in 2019, we were doing these monthly meetings at the library once a month, at the beginning of the month, and we would talk about certain subjects. And these were dope opportunities. Jenni, you've been out. These are opportunities that we were able to speak to the community, and it offered an intimate space where people would cry, people would do all kinds of things. But we were worried about losing that when we went virtual. We've lost it to some extent as far as like the small rooms and being able to be close to people, hugging on people and loving on people. But we also realize like the conversation about mental health has become more normalized by having open space. So people could be viewing this right now in the comfort of their own room, on their phone, whatever, or listening to it on a podcast or on a YouTube at a later date or time. So the reach for it has grown. And I think with art therapy, I never knew what art therapy was. I knew that art was therapeutic for me to do, like when I painted or when I create poems, but I didn't realize like the importance or the strategies of using like is it mindfulness? Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
When you're
yeah, absolutely.
What is a term that y'all use like at the beginning of the session I had with you where we listened to like some things to get us in a particular way of thinking. And what I appreciate from all of this, and even what you all are talking about, is that the conversation about art therapy is being introduced to people who may not have ever known about it. So when we get back to those intimate spaces, you'll have people more open to going to you all. and it's a lot cheaper than regular therapy. I think it works best with in concert. It is like, I think it works in concert with therapy. And I'm going to give a testimony, and I'm going to shut up for a minute. I see a therapist for my own.
Cheaper, Ihsan, but
no, I mean, because
we should be paid more.
I would say though that there's more valuable, because art therapy, the artwork literally taps into your subconscious and brings information from that space into a tangible reality for you. So I wouldn't necessarily say in terms of like financial or monetary cost that it would be like less expensive. But the value that you receive is going to be very different from compared to like traditional talk therapy, because you literally can access parts of your experiences, your thoughts, and your feelings that you can't access from conscious thinking or from verbal processing or cognitive processing alone. So I would just throw that out there.
I think
and I'll just add that then it means that you have tools that are really motivating and at your fingertips when you leave the therapy session. So it does extend therapy in a really lovely, unique way as well.
That's what the point I was going to make, is that it extends the therapy. So I see a psychologist on a weekly basis. And on a Friday. So when I was in a session with Brittany in the art therapy place, it was on a Saturday afternoon. I already was like, okay, I got my opportunity to vent and cry things out with my therapist on Friday. But then when I connected my experience on Saturday with Brittany and that experience in the art therapy place, my mind went somewhere different. So I think they work well within concert, the same way medication and therapy work, or going out for walks, all these things, they're all working together. They're not competitive. So I really appreciate what art therapy offers. Lamar?
So my question's for Kathryn and Sean. So I'm a Air Force veteran. I'm diagnosed with PTSD, and I have friends with children that have autism. So one of my questions is how does it like positively affect how can it help veterans, and how can it help children development with autism, or just development period at a young age?
Yeah, so you've tapped into two of my primary areas of research, children with developmental delays, and I'm also a research fellow at Drexel, and we're studying art therapy with veterans, and there's a lot of really good research and collaborations between the National Endowment for the Arts and the Armed Services to really look at the creative arts therapies with veteran populations. For both, it's a form of nonverbal communication, and PTSD is a nonverbal assault to our system. And kids with developmental delays struggle linking their internal experiences with our language system in effective ways, everything that's going on in their sensory processing system, and how they're trying to communicate their feelings, needs, and experiences. And what I'll say to that is that drawing is part of our normal development. Kids pick up tools at 18 months and start to, make marks in the dirt, make marks in their food, and then they put it on paper and they recognize, how wonderful and important and how much that shows their sense of agency and their ability to do things in the world. And when that's a struggle because of a child's developmental delays, autism spectrum disorders, we need all kinds of highly motivating and sensory experiences to help jog their development into more anticipated, perspectives to help them communicate more effectively. And so giving them those sensory tools of a variety of sorts is really, a wonderful piece to that developmental puzzle that we're trying to link.
Okay. Sean?
Yeah, I think the way that I look at both of them is that in both situations, the body is leading. So what happens with PTSD is that, you have a physical reaction to something that's happening in your mind through your past experiences. With autism, a lot of what happens is that sensory leads more than what, like a lot of times I think that we structure feelings and emotions and thoughts from the top up, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that we make that more important. So what happens with art therapy is that you can connect the sensory, you can connect the part that feels like a person with autism sometimes will want to feel a thing. will want to touch something wet or dry, and since they can't, they have a physical reaction to it, which as adults we tell them is wrong. And what happens in our therapy is that you can kind of use those like natural inclinations to turn it into an artwork. So if a client wants to scratch a thing, then you can put paint on their fingers and it creates like artwork right there. So I think when you talk about PTSD, I think because we tend to think the body is not as smart as the mind, that we make people say things that they don't want to say and think things that they may not necessarily want to go. But what happens when you connect it, when it's a more sensory way, which is like either holding a paintbrush or using clay or doing anything with your body, it starts to lead, and you can actually start working on that trauma without having to talk about it. And then you can if you want to. But I think in general, I think that when it comes to art therapy specifically, I think Kathryn, like just backing on what you said, we all know how to do this. It's a really, really, really old cultural practice that we've decided to commodify and make money off of. But at the same time, every single culture has created art, and the way that people create art is kind of, they're always working something out. And what I love about art and art therapy specifically is that a lot of the times the people with mental illness that we classify as mentally ill are the ones that create an entire culture. Like they literally create what cultures look like in terms of the things, the symbology and things of that sort. And I think that when we really think about it, like there are so many people that are teaching us if we actually decided to kind of listen and look. And I think art therapy is exactly the same, because people are always communicating, but they just don't really know it. So I think when you think about art, we all are artists, we all know something that what we're doing, but we just all have to kind of believe that what we're thinking and doing is valuable. And I think having a therapist just tell you what you already know sometimes feels really good. So.
Yeah. So I wanted to get into some of the programs that that you offer, and I want to start with Jenni. Jenni, if you could you just talk about the programs that you're offering?
Yeah, so one of the programs that I have right now is called the 90-Day Breakthrough. I'm actually going to pull this up so I can read some specific stuff so I don't say anything wrong. But the 90-Day Breakthrough basically is an opportunity for people to really take like a deep, intense dive into what are some things that are getting in the way. Because I think a lot of times, because I think about people who are like really successful, or like you're winning on the outside, everything looks good on paper, you present well, but you have that like internal something that you're like, there's something I know that's like holding me back from really getting to that next level. But on the outside, you're already looking next level, right? So there's something that's getting in the way. So using the art therapy techniques to really like tap into that subconscious content to find out and understand what's getting in the way. And a lot of times too, I look at it from the perspective of like, what have we internalized from society, from our family? So this could be specific to like race, this could be specific to gender or sexual orientation. It could just be specific to like messages that we've received in our family that is like misinformation that's been labeled to like be our identity. And it's like, that's not even really authentic for me, but I've been operating from that space for so long, I don't know how to exist in any other way. So it's an opportunity to really look into those things. And I've created what I call the rebel principles, because I'm like, we change agents, we out here, we're going to be rebels. And so the rebel principles is really an acronym for recognizing the legacy you're destined to create, establishing balance and alignment for a harmonious lifestyle, being your most authentic and unashamed self, experiencing emotional freedom with effective coping skills, and living fully in your life's passion and purpose. So basically what we do in the 90-Day Breakthrough is that you would select 3 of those different topics, or maybe you might have one that you just want to go really deep into. And then through a combination of art and creative processing activities, reflective journaling, and just actual having sessions like where we are like sharing and Q&A and kind of giving feedback and things like that, you go through each of those different topics for that 3-month period. So each one is like a really intense deep dive, and you're going to come out of that with all kinds of revelations and new information, with also like action steps that you can implement into your life to begin, taking action and achieving new results in your life. So that's like the 90-Day Breakthrough program. So that's like my main thing that I'm offering right now. I also have like a year-long program that I kind of launch every so often. It's kind of an ongoing enrollment process, and that's called Self Synergy 101. So if you think about the 90-day approach, and we extend that for like an entire year. So throughout that time in that year, it's really looking into self-care practices. What are effective self-care practices versus like this traditional cookie cutter approach to self-care, being strategic and intentional about the activities. How do we schedule them so we can realistically commit to the practice? Then once again, going into that subconscious stuff, like what gets in the way of us committing to that practice? Because a lot of times what gets in the way is that we don't feel worthy of the time. We don't feel worthy of the care. And once again, that goes back to these messages that we've internalized from society or from family or both. And then it also goes into like a healing process and like, how do we heal from past trauma experiences? Because once again, sometimes we know there's this thing that I've been through and I know it's affecting me. So we look at that and kind of move through that. And then also, how do we notice our relationship patterns? So the different patterns that we have in our current relationships, what would be more ideal? What would we like to experience, whether that's our romantic partnerships, whether that's professional relationships, our family relationships. And so we begin to explore all of those as well, so that we can then move and spin in ways that are like more authentic in alignment with like what we want and what our goals are, and like how we want to show up in the world as our best selves. So the Self Synergy 101 program is like an elongated process that takes you through all of those different things. So it's a whole journey.
Yeah. That's it sounds like it's like at the end of it, just sounds like you just will come out a better person, just come out and not even a better person, just come out healed.
The next best version of you that is waiting to meet you. You just gotta go in and discover, because the healing process is really about, I need to recognize the pain and the pleasurable experiences and feelings that I have. How do I integrate these into my life, let go of what no longer serves me, and then sprinkle in the nuggets of the things that really make me who I am, in terms of like, who is my best self, and how do I go out here, and I like to say, go out there and sparkle and shine on them. So I want to get people to like meet the next best version of you, so you can go out there and sparkle and shine on them and make changes in the world, because we need you, because there are a lot of changes that need to happen in our world. So,
yeah. Thank you, Jenni. Brittany, would you like to talk about the art therapy place?
Yeah. Well, like I said, and I want to clarify, I work at Mount Sinai Hospital full time too. So I have a private practice, but I'm also working full time at a hospital in the inpatient adult psychiatric unit.
Right.
So that's, my private practice is now part-time. I do have another therapist working for me as well. So hopefully we can see more clients, since I'm so caught up also working. But at Art Therapy Space, we offer individual art therapy sessions, group, currently doing the virtual workshops on a monthly basis. But in our space, we have space to have workshops for 7 to 10 people, approximately. And so the hope is to have like ongoing art groups once that opens up again, or to groups, because, everybody needs to at least be 6 feet distance and probably not indoors. So that's probably not going to happen for a while. But I am meeting with social distance precautions with some clients in the space currently. And also we intend to, and moved into a larger office art studio space. So we are in an art studio in Bushwick, which is an art community, has, I think, the highest population of artists in any district in the world. So mural covered streets. So that's our neighborhood, which I really love. And have been doing art workshops with, under the name of Art Therapy for Artists. That's been going on for some years. So I was doing, originally doing art workshops with artists in the community, which was its own kind of dynamic and a little different than some, like, as we were talking about earlier, a lot of people that do art therapy aren't artists, so it was a little different. But I hope to host exhibitions as well. We'll be having our virtual exhibition this month, but I want that to be also an opportunity, give my clients the opportunity to exhibit their work, because as an artist, it has been one of the most healing experiences I've ever had to exhibit my artwork as well, which obviously has a lot of ethical considerations in terms of confidentiality when we're displaying clients' work and making sure that it's a safe environment for them to do that. But it's something that I look forward to really cultivating in the practice. So, that in some ways they can be seen in that way, and the output that they've worked so hard to kind of heal and progress in therapy can also be affirmed by the viewer, which I've seen to be very helpful in my work with the Bridge, where the Bridge is a housing agency in New York City that also does an exhibition at the MoMA every year, and I was working for them a little while right out of school. So I'm hoping to do something like what they're doing. So we'll see how that goes.
Thank you. Kathryn, could you talk about your programs?
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I said before, Parent to Child is my private practice, and we've been in existence in Philadelphia for about 15 years, serving children, teens, and families predominantly. I also have a specialty in working with women postpartum. So thinking about that early stage of motherhood and the way that art therapy can impact transitioning into that space. So most of our programs, we work with children individually, as well as group programs. With an individual focus, we're always focused on the family context, who are the caregivers and what supports do they need, and how can we really impact change from that systems level within the family, as well as linking to a child's school, because a child is one entity that is moved about through lots of layers of context. And the art therapy really serves to support their growth and development, and their way of learning how to be more of themselves in the world, and to, as Jenni was talking about the way she's working with, helping people become the better version of themselves. I hope to impact those early messages that kids receive so that they can kind of untangle that or not live with such a heavy burden early on, and to help parents and caregivers and schools see the child for all of their needs and all of their wonderfulness as well. Within that, some of the groups that we offer really focus on developing a child's social self. So we see a lot of kids with developmental delays, autism spectrum disorders, learning disabilities, and other kinds of things that when the child is out and about in the world, they're not functioning fully in that social reciprocal kind of context. And having a really well-supported art therapy group where they can develop those skills in the context of how are they learning how to be themselves, how are they learning how to communicate about themselves, how are we reflecting on that and sharing that with them so that they can be more interactive and reciprocal out and about in the world. So we have groups for all ages of kids to really support that, as well as support their emotional coping and development along the way, because that's at the heart of the social self is their emotional development. With teens and young adults, we continue to run groups that also support social development, but we also lean into that self-development and the emotional development a lot more. So we see a variety of teens with a variety of needs, from struggling with anxiety and depression to struggling with their gender identity, their sexuality, their emerging self, all of the messages that are out in the world that they're confounded by, trying to sift through and figure out what fits for who they are. Where the creative process can really help them sift through all of that and organize themselves into that person that they want to be, and be able to communicate that more effectively to parents, caregivers, community. So that's at the heart of what we do at Parent to Child, the private practice office. And then the nonprofit arm, Spark Art Therapy, is where we go out into the community and provide services for children and teens in their public schools, recognizing that even getting to a community mental health center is a resource that not everybody has access to. And in order to meet so many needs of kids and teens, we need to be right there where their lives exist day in and day out, and that's the school. And, there's all kinds of challenges to Philadelphia schools, to schools in general, to the education system. We really need to link appropriate child development to mental health and to education. And that's at the heart of what we want to do. Art therapy can be a really wonderful way of, again, it's really child-centered, developmentally focused along the way. It's really highly motivating and engaging for kids and teens. It doesn't feel like therapy. It feels more like fun, even when there is a struggle that they're processing and working with. And so meeting kids where they're at in schools is at the heart of that, and really breaking through some of the issues of accessibility and those barriers and stigmas to mental health solutions. So we're trying to grow those programs and really be present for what's happening this year as kids re-enter school mostly online this school year. We know that mental health is a really big need for everybody coming out of this pandemic and our reconciliation with racial violence. And so, we're really trying to tune in to how to support students more effectively and teachers. And so I hope to do some workshops to support teachers and other caregivers as they navigate these new waters.
Kathryn, I want to actually encourage you with the, or offer our support with the programs with the schools, and also for Jenni, if there's any type of connection you want to make with public schools. MBK Cares has recently gained some nice relationships within the city. We had a panel on last week where we discussed going back to school. We had someone who's an administrator at the Philadelphia school district, and he also has access to a lot of climate managers throughout the city of Philly. And his name is Kenneth Glover. Okay. He's really big on trying to connect mental health into the school systems. So we have access, I have access, or our organization has access to Comagee School, which is an elementary school, George Washington High School in Northeast Philly, and I'm forgetting all the other schools, but we have about 5 schools we have a relationship with. So even if we're able to work within just those small contexts, I'm willing to offer our relationships and our support and our ideas, or just lend our voice to the conversation. And that offers for you and Jenni. I know Jenni does a lot of work in the community. And when we open back up to doing the library events, we could also open that opportunity for you to bring in your art for our community, because that consists of the whole family, whether it's young to senior citizens. So I would like to offer that. You spoke of something just now that I thought would be a decent transition actually to Sean, is you talked about offering solutions that were going to help the students and the teachers. And I believe that right now the parents can't be left out of that, particularly when the parents are now in a role of being a teacher at the same time as being a parent when they're home.
I'm struggling.
Yeah. It is not everybody's, role and responsibility to parent and teach at the same time and do your own work. It's tough.
I would actually like to offer you an opportunity to talk about some tips that parents could use with art therapy to help with the development of their children, or even tips that parents could use art therapy to help them during their own experiences as parents, teachers, providers, all the types of roles that they have to wear at the same time.
So that's actually really good that you asked that, because that's what I was thinking about, like what parents could use for their kids. But I think one of the biggest and most difficult parts about being a parent is kind of watching your kid develop and knowing that there's a certain extent you can't really do anything about. And that puts a lot of pressure, especially when it comes to kids on the autism spectrum that tend to be just really unique. No two kids are the same. And when it comes to autism, like they sometimes have really particular things about them. And that parents, what I've experienced is that they sometimes internalize like a feeling of, well, they're not doing good enough, or my kid isn't reaching this milestone, or, things could be better if XYZ. And I think what happens with a lot of parents is that they leave themselves out of it. They forget that if they are going to be the ones that are going to be teaching these kids and helping these kids and raising these kids, that they also have to be well enough to do so. And what that means is, in terms of being well, is that like you actually take a time and space where you can not feel guilty for, and if you can, of course, take that space for yourself to kind of be like, hey, relax, I'm doing the best I can. And so I think that, to be honest, in this time when everyone is kind of struggling, being able to take 5 minutes, if possible, maybe give your kid just a drawing activity that is not goal centered, but for you, it's just so you can be doing something where for a second you can doodle. For a second, you can just let your mind wander and feel okay with just taking a time for yourself. especially now with the pandemic, and especially now with the pressure of being alive, the pressure of being a person, the pressure of being a Black person, the pressure of being like a human in America, a human in the world. I think that when we talk about art therapy specifically, it's one of the few times that you can actually just sit and be quiet and not have media and not have your phone. And so if it can be an activity, I don't think it, to me at least right now, I think it doesn't matter specifically, but what it is being able to carve out 5 minutes or 10 minutes where you can just focus on yourself and not feel guilty about it. And that not feeling guilty about it has to be part of the rule. And I think that's really, really, really difficult to do. And if you can just do that literally for 5 minutes, that starts something. And then that can mean that you as a parent can just show your child that it's okay to take a break, literally for 5 minutes. And no matter what, kids are always watching you. And I think it's really important to practice what you preach, and to take that time for yourself.
Sean, I want to ask you some specifics about what does that time look like? Because my reason for saying that is, like, when we had discussions about promoting therapy and people seeing counselors, if they weren't able to get there, we would still encourage people to take time to journal or do other things, so that way they're at least getting used to getting their ideas and thoughts out. If somebody's not able to connect with an art therapist, what are some things that they could do in the course of their day? If they have a half hour while they're home parenting, what can they do? Should they get like a scrapbook? Should they watch videos? Like, what types of things could they do to encourage them to express themselves artistically and have it be therapeutic?
So I think journaling is great. I think one thing that people don't know about is visual journaling.
Okay.
So that means that you don't use a word. If you want to doodle, that's fine. And it's just the same thing as a book, but you would get a book that is probably blank. And then all you do is allow yourself to cover the page as much as you want to. And then you don't have to explain it. It doesn't matter. You can, so when you talk about autism too, like that sensory aspect, we need that as well. Everyone needs that as well. So sometimes I'll just open a book and I'll take a black marker and I'll just color the page black. Or sometimes if I'm pissed off, I will take it and I will just I'll go until I rip the pages. There's no wrong way of doing it, but it's to express an emotion. And then after a while, you start looking at the book, like as the time fills up, and then you just start, being able to recognize something that you can recognize the emotions. And then you could also kind of make that into an activity where you can kind of, say with your kid, like, what do you think this feeling was? Like, not to be too transparent with the kid because you don't want them to be too concerned about your, in a certain way, but it's a nice way to kind of recognize, like, wow, I'm doing like smooth lines. Maybe I'm relaxed and maybe I'm just angry or something like that. So that's another just really easy tool. Another thing that a lot of our therapists do, but a lot of people just do, is like just taking a sheet of paper and filling the space as much as you want to. So that can be within a circle or whatever. But a lot of things, a mandala is just basically a circle that people use to kind of convey emotions. But mandalas are found in a lot of things. Mandalas are found in like certain coloring book activities. Sometimes the pattern itself is therapeutic. But I also think that last but not least, but thinking about like a sheet of paper, you can rip it up. You can crush it up. You can dip it in water. Think about what that thing makes you feel. And then see if you can just bring that into what you're doing. So if you're feeling anxious, put your hand in water. That's art. If you're feeling like, what I mean? Like, how can I say it? If it's a really, really hot day, hold a piece of ice, let it melt in your hand, and focus on what it feels like for that ice to melt in your hand. If you want, you can put a dot of paint on it and just watch it drip. Basically, it's just taking a second as an adult. The only time that I think we ever take a break is when we're smoking a cigarette, and everyone says that's okay. But literally taking a minute where you can just focus on a thing that you're doing. Washing the dishes is creating art. You're putting soap on a thing, and then you're washing the soap off slowly, but you just have to notice that what you're doing and feel what you're feeling, and being like, wow, that feels calm, that feels wet, that feels warm or cold. And so thinking about art in a different way, we are constantly engaging with art and but it's all about allowing yourself to look at it and your life as an artistic action, you know? And so I think when you frame it that way, art therapy is in no way something that is unique, and it's in no way something that you're not familiar with. But if you think of your hands as the hands of an artist, then your life kind of replicates that, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very encouraging to hear you talk about that, specifically being a Black man right now, to talk about like tools, like these are things that we all need, and to identify like how you made it very simple and plain. We live in a very interesting time. Like we have,
Interesting is the word.
it's difficult. I found myself this week like really asking God, like, God, can we get a break? Like we're losing heroes to like just common things. We're losing people on the street to gun violence in Philadelphia at an astronomical rate. We're losing people to brutality. Like there's suicide taking lives. There's so many different things. And then there's just lack of resources causing us to not have access to certain foods. So dietary, we're suffering just from access to things that have a high quality of life. So just to be a man and hear another African-American man or a Black man speak about a way that you can heal or just do something productive with your day and your time is very encouraging. And I applaud you for being brave enough to talk about it. I'm going to get into something specifically about how we're applying these things to our personal lives too. But I want to make sure I give Jenni an opportunity, and then Brittany. Jenni, you seemed very excited when he talked about bringing out the scrapbook. I forgot what he called it. It was a
journal. I had one. I'm like, it's right there. I am a huge fan of a visual journal. Actually, do you mind if I grab it? It's like literally right there. Let me share it with you all real quick.
Can I just add one thing in the meantime? So
yeah.
I have some links to access for Black men to get free therapy. So
could you say them out loud? Because some of our viewers tend to post these things on the comments.
Yeah, just as a heads up, I'll send it. There are organizations that are giving free therapy to Black men. And
Is Black Men Heal?
I have it. I'll put it in the show.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, so this is my little visual journal. And I love a visual journal. I've been doing this since grad school. And so just to show, because I am like an artist, but like I literally just created shapes. And for me, like I'll sit down and in one sitting, I'll just keep flipping the page and creating stuff until I feel done. So there is no, like you can see, it's just line shapes and colors. So you can't really see the lines on that one too well. Here, I'll just flip ahead a little. I guess it's hard to see the lines on that one, but literally just putting lines, there we go, line shapes and colors onto the page. And I literally just keep turning the page until I get to a place where I feel complete. And any given day, it looks totally different, but like even just flipping through, you can pick up on like some emotional context, or it may bring up an emotion for you. So yeah, I do this often because I think it's a great way too to get out of my head, to stop overthinking about things, and to just create, and I feel relieved. Like it's a process of externalizing what's going on with my brain, and not, like Sean said, like I don't have to name every single thing. I'm just getting it out. So I love a visual journal, definitely recommend them. And you can definitely go back and you can write things, you can process more about it. You can like write out like what you were feeling during that time and everything. I also wanted to share about the coloring, because people are so wrapped up in these adult coloring books. And I'm like, no, get a child's coloring book. Go to the dollar store, find your favorite cartoon character, and buy that coloring book for $1, and get a pack of markers or a pack of crayons for $1, and sit with your children, or even with yourself. Like I have I have a private Facebook group called Break Free Community, and part of what I do every week is I talk about a mental wellness like nugget, and then I literally sit there and invite people to color with me. And it's important too to not get something that has a lot of shapes. Because a lot of these adult coloring books have all these shapes, and like you'll color it and you'll start feeling anxious because there's so many shapes to it. You won't finish it, so then you feel defeated, which is like the exact opposite of coloring. So get a child, like get one that also brings up nostalgia. Like I have like strawberry shortcake. I got My Little Ponies. I got Wonder Woman. I have the classic Looney Tunes. So I just also wanted to share that. And then one last thing, because I had this in my office. I don't know, Ihsan, you've been in my office before when I was downtown. So this is the feather that if you ever want to be mean to you and you want to beat yourself up, you may only use a feather, because you have to be gentle with you. And like Sean said, children are watching you. If they see how hard you are on themselves, they internalize that, and then they're hard on themselves all the time. What would it be like to offer yourself some compassion? So like if you did something wrong, it could be like, instead of like hammering yourself in the head, because you shouldn't treat you like that. And I found out by accident one time when I was explaining this to someone, I was doing this. I'm like, you have to you can only beat you with the feather. And I was doing that, and I was like, oh, wow, I feel kind of royal and special. Isn't that an interesting thought? When I make a mistake, or when I feel like I'm not good enough, to pause and actually be like, oh, I'm actually special and I'm good enough and I deserve like good things and good people and good experiences. And that when I believe that, I can then transmit that to other people around me. So
I have a question for you, Jenni.
uh-huh.
Is that your favorite color combination? I've seen that color around you a lot.
I am a fan of purples, turquoises, and shades of pink. Yes. You are noticing that theme with the accent. Yes. Yeah. Also, like right here, I got the turquoise pillow. I got the pink pillow. I'm like wearing blue and purple. Yeah. Those are my colors.
Yeah. I wanted actually want to shift the conversation to Brittany. Brittany, I'm a fan of you. I've had the opportunity to, well, first of all, I'm really grateful of what we talked about, what social media has provided. I connected with you through social media, and it allowed this opportunity for us to, you're in New York right now. You're in Brooklyn, correct?
Yep.
So we're speaking first of all, I've never even met you in person. I've never met any of you in person except for Lamar and Jenni. So I met half of y'all in person. Well, whatever. 2/5 of y'all. I make up part of that half. Whatever. All right.
You know you.
All right. So with Brittany, I'm a fan of you, and I had the opportunity to read your bio and to hear some of your story in detail. And what I'm grateful for is to hear how, like, I really appreciate people who are fans or advocates of mental health, but have applied it to their life. And to see people overcome, I think it helps people identify and say, you know what, this is within reach. Lamar Dixon, who's one of our moderators tonight, Lamar's story involves a path that led him in high school to be a parent as a teenager. He got left down. He also went to the military for several years. He overcame those odds and now has his master's degree, and I believe he's working on his doctorate. And I love telling that story because he's come from some struggle and some things that are preserved or perceived failure and turn them into some phenomenal things that people could say they've overcome. I know that to be true of your story, Brittany. So I set it out to say, how has art helped you with your experience, or how have you shifted your experience into your art? Or just expand on what your thoughts are. If you want to share your story, I would love to hear it if you're welcome, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, thank you. And that was very sweet of you to say, and I'm so happy that we connected in this way. And I do feel like this is going to be a relationship that lasts a long time. So thank you for this and for this opportunity. And so my art and my activism and my art therapy might as well they just go like this to each other. They're just always, sometimes they're like one thing, and sometimes like two of them are married to each other, and then but I feel like they all like go so well together. Like so many of us as art therapists are activists, and so many of us as art therapists are artists, and art moves the people move the politicians, all of that kind of all together, it ends up just, we all do the same thing as that, we might as well be all of them. But I do feel like I'll just go into a little bit of my story. So I am a person who holds a diagnosis of bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. And as a youth growing up, I got into some drugs and, ended up getting involved in the criminal justice system. I came from a pretty abusive home and background, and ended up incarcerated for marijuana charges or cannabis charges, and it led to a lot of institutionalizations, acting as kind of having borderline personality traits in a way where I was kind of having to doing self-harm and suicide attempts as a way of manipulating my way out of really terrible situations, and then sometimes really trying to kill myself in those situations because they were so awful. And a lot of these experiences ended up surviving a rape circumstance with a staff person at one of the facilities where I was a client, a mental health client. And so wide variety of traumas that often are related to the mental health system. I work now in a hospital. I've been in the hospital many times. I've been strapped down to a bed in the hospital. I remember what that feels like. I have the unfortunate opportunity to see that happen still, which is troubling, but it's something that I feel grateful that I'm strong enough to be able to, then know that's happening, and then have the opportunity to talk to the people that happens to, and be there for them, and know what that feels like for that to happen. And so, I think the traumas were many, and I think for a long time they were, and I believe Jenni was talking about this as well, just as a concept, but very difficult to integrate them into myself, and to be able to own those experiences was a really difficult thing for me to do. I see other people who have like borderline kind of traits, and I notice, and I know I had developed some of those. And for those of us who are familiar with borderline personality, that is something that can come from, it's a diagnosis that can oftentimes come from situations where people were abandoned or abused as young people. But I realized, as I see in some of my patients with borderline personalities too, that I was able to talk about these traumas like they were like it was nothing. Like, to say them, it was almost like a shock value to other people seemingly, and maybe it was, but like I was able to talk. They rolled off my tongue as if like people were like, how could you talk about something like that loosely? And I came to realize that a lot of that was because I hadn't integrated that into who I was. It was too difficult to own those experiences. It was like telling a story that happened to somebody else. And I'm bringing up this whole part of that story because though to tie into just making artwork and how that has been helpful. I did have an art therapist at one point whenever I was in a psychiatric unit as a youth. And so that is what kind of showed me that was a thing. And so I got into it later and I liked it, but my time with it was brief. It more or less just brought that into my awareness. But I was able to, leaving Pittsburgh, where I'm from, and like moving on to now coming to grad school. So I managed to kind of overcome these experiences. Now on my way to grad school, I created a series of works that were actually visuals of the traumas that had occurred. And I was able to now share them in a way that wasn't shocking everybody. And maybe it was shocking people, for sure. I mean, some of them are kind of shocking, right? But I was able to see myself in those images and integrate those experiences, and also be able to kind of show them to a group of people that this is what I went through, and in a healthy way where the response was positive. And I felt like, okay, no, this is okay, that this is part of me, to create this work. And, the whole process of it too, I was reading letters that, I wrote during those times, and doing other kind of relivings of the experience, but as a way of purging. And Anyway, I had the opportunity to exhibit all of those works and see the response. And I think it was one of the most healing things I've ever done for myself. And I continue to try to do that in campaigns for sexual violence, to raise awareness for sexual violence and try to end it in New York City jails. And now continuing to do that also with work related to incarceration. So Ihsan, thank you for giving me the opportunity to say all of that, but and I hope it made sense in sequence, but there hoped to tie it into the art making as well.
Absolutely. Like I'm touched by it because it's adversity that somebody out there may be keeping silent, particularly when it comes to sexual abuse. I know that a lot of women have that experience, and when I've seen some of the woodwork you've done, it seems like it's speaking to the experience of being on trial and not being heard or whatever. But I appreciate you for being brave and for also sharing that. I like Lamar to take it from here because I'm sure everyone has a testimony of how their lives have contributed to their desire to not only help other people, but in order for them to pursue their own mental health improvement. Lamar?
Yeah. Hey, Brittany, man, I just want to I want to thank you for sharing your story. They say like if you're able to tell your story without crying, then you're on the right road to heal. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. My next question is, and I want to start with Sean. And I know that there's a lot of degrees and things that you guys done that are amazing, but I know Sean, I read your bio that you're a painter, sculptor, photographer, part-time curator. Like, who inspires you? Like, who artistically inspires you to create?
You said artistically. Oh no.
Yeah. Or, well, who inspires you? Let's just say
Okay.
that.
Because that actually was the hardest question. To be honest, the one person so I don't know. I always think about like that time matters a lot. And right now, the person that I'm like really interested in terms of like the way that they think, maybe a surprise, but I think Ihsan is a really interesting person.
Yeah.
Specifically because I think when people go and get into positions of power and have money, all the things that they tend to have said when they didn't have it change drastically when they have money. And I think his mind is interesting because he's actually, you can see the thought that happened when he was just coming up, and I think it's actually happening. And I also think that he is a person that you can literally see how he grew from just literally how he thought. Artistically, I don't really have a specific person. I think some people are just interesting. I like Frida Kahlo. But I think there are lots of artists that I find really inspiring. But the people that I really find inspiring, and I don't know why this is particularly, but I think the new generation of kids coming up are really interesting. I think they're a lot smarter than I was when I was in junior high school or elementary school. The way that they think is really different. And I think that I feel that something about this generation, especially like with the COVID and all this stuff happening, is going to produce a generation of kids that are going to shift something. I don't know why I feel this, but I can see it. I can see it in the young ones. I can see the things that they pick up on. I can see that they call people out very easily. I can see the thoughts that they have that are just really different. And when I see it, I think it's just completely fascinating. And I think that kids that grew up, that like my niece and nephew, they've had a Black president for 8 years and they're 10 and 12, you know what I mean?
Right.
I think something different is going to happen with these kids. To me, they're very inspiring, you know?
Yeah. Kathryn, how about you? Who artistically or just anyone, who inspires you to create?
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate Sean's answer. I think that the young generation is so unafraid. They're so unafraid to be creative. They're so unafraid to be a community and to be together and to kind of like do away with so many of the kind of rigid boundaries that we've created politically, educationally, socially. So anyway, I'm just resonating with that for a moment. I really love art that helps people be in environments where they can connect. So there's this body of art loosely associated with a movement called relational aesthetics. There's lots of different frameworks or labels for it. But Anne Hamilton comes to mind as one of the artists in that category. She's a professor in Ohio. She had an installation where Cherry Street Pier is here in Philadelphia a couple of years ago before it turned into Cherry Street Pier. They cleared out the warehouse along the waterfront and installed these amazing fabrics hanging from hoops from the very heights of the ceiling, and semi-sheer fabrics. And you could walk into these hoops and pull ropes and hear sound. And they would also slowly turn. Somewhat on their own, but I think you could also manipulate the ropes. And she's done many other projects with similar kinds of things, including giant swings. Anyway, I just love things that really get people interacting with space and with object, but the object isn't so singular. And really helps us consider what our spaces are like and what our involvement in art is about, because I think that art is everywhere, art is every day. I think all of us on this panel and the two of you guiding us, agree, and we're somehow trying to like define it and figure it out and figure out how to really use it in a way that's productive for our own selves. And I think that there's a ton of people doing that kind of work. And I really appreciate that. I think that some of the movements that we have here in Philadelphia towards public spaces being more engageable is really lovely. We've got a long way to go, and we've got plenty more spaces that need to be activated in beautiful community-centered ways, but that's what really inspires me.
I was just thinking about something that you and Sean said about kids. And I thought about myself, like as a child, whenever my mom told me to do something, it was just like, because I said so. And, and you grow into that, like as an adult, and you don't question, like when you get into your job, you don't question the person, your supervisor or boss or whoever. You don't question them because he said so. And and for me, it took a while to be like, man, I got an opinion, and it took a while to click, and I think about my son now, he'll be 7 soon, and, he asks a question and it's always why, and I give him a good answer, so I don't tell him, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, kids have to learn. We all have to learn that it's reciprocal, right? We have a voice in this too, and it can be a shared development of what the process or need is, whether it's a work project or something else. We've all got a voice in it.
Yeah.
And whenever you bring that up, oh, sorry.
Okay.
Lamar, whenever you talk about like because I said so, it kind of made me think about like Carl Jung's shadow, our shadow or our persona. There are these parts of us that weren't reinforced growing up. Maybe you had that opinion and you were told, nope, that one's not good. You can't have that one. Oh, I'm not supposed to feel like that. Okay.
Yeah.
And art therapy does tap into that persona, that shadow self of ours, and allow us to kind of, I guess, make visible some of those parts of ourselves that we've learned to repress.
Right.
And there's some specific directives, particular projects that can target that more specifically, but it can help us maybe voice our opinion or show the whole breadth of who we are in ways that we weren't able to through the symbolic, which Carl Jung does kind of talk about more than a lot of other theorists in some ways.
Yeah, I was gonna also echo like what Sean said. I always think about that. My godsons, they're like 13 and almost 11, and I'm always thinking about like, yeah, their entire like the majority of their life they had a Black president. Like I can't even fathom what that does to the psyche of any child, especially Black children, but like any child in this country. Like, what does that do to their psyche? How is that going to I can't even fathom it because that's so not my experience at all. And I also just think too that that children these days, they are so inclusive. Like they don't label, and like for better or worse, they're disconnected from so much history in a way that like they don't carry that burden the same way that we do. And it's like a catch-22 of like, y'all need to know, but then again, they're doing some really great things because you don't carry that. So I always think about that, and it's always interesting. And also what you just said, Lamar, too, about like, because I said so. My dad would always say that, you do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
But I was also always a rebel. So like, I was always kind of like, well, I don't care what you said, because I'm gonna, so like, I'm like a rebel, like with a cause, and I'm doing positive things versus like just being that kid, like cussing teachers out and smoking weed. So it's been a journey and an evolution to like, see how like, and I even think when I work with like young people, I love working with those children who are considered like those like troublemakers. They're my favorite because they're leaders. They just need to be cultivated, and they need to understand like how you have leadership qualities, and like let's flip this and look at like what you can do with that voice and that agency. So they're always my favorites because I was them. So
I think that's the tagline for art therapists is we were rebels, but we found art to like put it into and then share it with.
Oh yeah, because people would have gotten hurt. I always say if I didn't have art in my life, I would either kill myself or kill somebody else, more likely somebody else, and I'd have been in jail.
When you talk about troublemakers, I think about this quote. If you judge a fish by his ability to climb a tree, then he'll think he'll go his whole life thinking he was stupid.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. It just applied to.
That's a good one.
Me.
You made me think of the proverb of that the children, when they're not heard, they will burn the city down so they can feel its warmth.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot in the last 8 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Makes sense, like right now.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
I'm going to transition that into a reason why we need to make sure we vote in the next upcoming election, whatever direction we're going. This
He's like, we're gonna slide right on into this.
Talk about the world burning. Like, if things go a particular way, who knows how this thing might turn out. So, I really appreciate, like, there was something Sean talked about that I thought was really dope about Akon. Akon, I heard, was trying to, or is in the process of building a city in Africa. Yeah. And it made me think about Wakanda. And this week, right now, we're dealing with the grief of the loss of another African-American hero. And this year it's been several of those. We've had Kobe Bryant die in January. We've had I forget his name right now. The guy, it's losing me right now. Our political hero.
John.
I'm sorry?
Wait.
Why is
this? John Lewis?
John Lewis, right? I was like, was I saying it wrong?
No, John Lewis. Sorry, rest in peace, John Lewis. And now we've lost Chadwick. And it's just, we've lost, some people were actually posting this week about why are we celebrating a fictional hero. In Philly, Rocky has a statue, and he is a movie character, right? So you can keep that, please, because this was somebody who was like symbolic, and he's stood for something with his the roles he's played. He's played Thurgood Marshall. He's played James Brown. He's played
Jackie Robinson.
And then he's played the first, like, a black superhero, like, and a real superhero. And I think it was really dope. But then he just also was a college graduate. He was somebody who I'm learning now about things he represented. To lose these figures impacts our mental health in a particular way. And I'm just really grateful that you are talking about other ways we can deal with this, because this year is a lot of loss. And it's not that loss is not impacting all of us, because it's impacting us whether we're white, black, Asian, male, female, whatever. But in particular, this year for the black experience has been rather difficult, because we're told that the disease of COVID-19 is impacting our community in tremendous ways that it's not impacting everyone. Then we're in circumstances where we live in tight quarters when we're supposed to have social distancing to help us. Then we're watching our people die on the news. It's like it's ESPN for murdering black people. And then we're losing people just to natural causes. So it's a year with a lot of grief. So I appreciate you all for offering some resources and talking about another way that people can apply a therapeutic approach to making sure that they're okay, and being okay with not being okay, and letting some days look like part of the process that they require. I wanted to share a painting that I did on one of Brittany's art therapy sessions, and this was actually done June 27th. And this painting right here, like, I'm not the best painter, but can y'all see that?
Mm-hmm.
This for me represented 2020, and it had, this was like a little bit after, this was a month after George Floyd died. So we have the mask, that's the world with the mask on. Y'all can see that? Then it's Black Lives Matter. Then it's 2020, there's Kobe Bryant dying, and just blood, sweat, and tears. Now, this painting, and also is me crying under my bed, which made me think about me being a child. The reason I bring that up is because art therapy, what I've learned, I'm gonna give a testimony of it so that you can identify with other people. What I learned from my experience with it is that it's okay for your experience to be different than everybody else's. When Brittany was had me in the session, it was a whole room of, it was just ladies in there, if I recall, and I was the only dude, except for some boyfriends who were on with their girls while they were on there. But I remember people's experience during the mindfulness period of the session. People were thinking about like being on the beach, being on all these places when they were told to identify a safe space and connect there. My mind went to hiding under my bed for a safe space, and I felt out of place with that experience. But then as I started drawing it, I was like, no, that is my safe space, because it took me back to being a child hiding under my bed from monsters. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this world right now has a lot of monsters for African Americans, or just for so many people. And I say that I'm connecting a lot of thoughts like you do, Brittany. People this year are not growing up with the same experience that Sean identified with 8 years of an African American president. Some kids are growing into their mind is working a particular way, and they're seeing hate nonstop on their television screen.
Mm-hmm.
They're experiencing school virtually. They're experiencing watching their families break up from this quarantine period, increasing the divorce rate or domestic violence. They're seeing so many things just go wrong in this world. I can't imagine what it's like to be a child right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful to be a father and see my children have the freedom to express themselves and the bravery to be able to speak freely, so that they don't have the trauma, they don't have neglect or abuse on their heels all the time. But what about those who do? And these resources, these testimonies, they're powerful. If any of you feel like you would like to speak about traumatic experiences in your own lives, I'll open the floor for that right now, because I'm sure other people could appreciate that. And then I would like us to close out with resources that people can go to in order to follow you, websites, anything, or any products, or any type of way that people can gain further resource beyond this moment right here. So I want to start with Sean with that. Then we'll go to Jenni, Kathryn, and we'll close out with Brittany, and I'll let Lamar have final comments.
Thank you for sharing that, like, really. So I think, so I have a lot to say, like there's a lot to kind of process, but
Let it out.
There's like two big things that I think that, like, I think are just really important for myself. Like one of the biggest things for me is that kind of learning that, so right now I'm an art therapist. I'm doing nothing. I'm literally doing nothing. I came back to the States very recently, and there's all this pressure for me to do and get a job and all that stuff. I've been sad. I don't want to do stuff. And so when you try to explain it to people, they are, oh, you got to get a job, it's going to happen. But I think it's very difficult as an adult to justify that you do not want to engage with the world for a little while. And that's okay. And I think that right now, I think that's really, really important for people. There's a website I follow called the Knapp Ministry. And basically all it talks about is creatively detaching from the world without being, and it's not in an unhealthy way, but I think that should be something that people can understand and feel and be okay with, number one. But I also think the other part about this is that, like, for me, like, one of the things that helps me feel safe is actually not sharing certain things, meaning that I think, like, one of the things that I really don't like in general is that, like, we're sharing all these images of Black people dying. I hate it. And I think that there is so much of social media that pulls everybody into everybody else's life. And I think, like, for me purposefully, I'm doing the complete opposite because I don't necessarily know if it's kind of healthy. So for me right now, like in terms of just me sharing and being part of like what I want to be, like I'm in like a cocoon and I feel really comfortable with that. That doesn't mean I'm avoiding, and that doesn't mean actually does mean I'm avoiding. That's okay. You know what I mean? But it does. But what it is that I think that idea that you have to justify what you feel, I personally have an issue with that. Like, you can just feel and you can just be. And I think this really tough time that's happening right now is actually kind of showing us, like, you know, you sometimes when you step back and you look at stuff, you're like, whoa, everything sucks. It just sucks. And I don't have to fix it and I don't have to involve. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And I think I just learned it from being a Black male and seeing people that look like me that are not represented, or when they're represented, it's the worst possible thing. So for me, I'm purposefully stepping back. I will get a job soon, but in the meantime, I don't know. I'm just kind of practicing that as I just being in my cocoon and not feeling the need to justify it or even explain it, honestly, where I am right now.
So should I just jump in now? So you said I'm up next. So what Sean said, like all of that. Yeah, I recently, just to piggyback too, I recently was having a conversation with another fellow art therapist, another Pratt grad also, about, this to me, it feels very perverse to constantly be showing all this imagery of Black people being murdered. I don't need to see that to know that it's real or that it's happening. And there is something about it that I think perpetuates this dehumanization and desensitization of our lives being valuable, or that these are people, brothers, fathers, uncles, mothers, sisters. There's something that's being lost, I think, with constantly traumatizing ourselves. And I don't choose to participate in that because I don't need to re-traumatize myself to understand or to know what the issues are in this country. I'm a Black woman. I know what these issues are. They're not new. And I don't need to constantly expose myself to be informed or to know how to take action. I also agree too. I love the Knapp ministry also, Sean, to take those moments to pause and to take care of myself. Because one of the things that I'm very passionate about is like really recognizing, I talked a lot today about subconscious, like what am I inviting into my subconscious? And as a Black person, I don't need to constantly be focusing on racism or systems of white supremacy or racist people, because that's just, if I'm focused on that, that's literally what I'm constantly inviting into my body, what I'm constantly inviting into my spirit, what I'm constantly pouring into my subconscious. And for me, it's more valuable and a better use of my time to be focused on healing and to be focused on solution, to be focused on the positive people and experiences and role models that are around that I know personally, that are part of my community, that are part of my society. So to me, it's very important to intentionally seek out that information. So that is what I'm being filled with. Because when I'm filled with that, then also as a person who's like in service to other people, I'm better equipped to be of service to others because I'm taking the time to fill myself with what I need so that I can show up and be my best me. So like, I don't just do, and I forget who had mentioned that earlier. I don't know if that was, Brittany. Like, I don't just do this work, I live this work. And so I just also echo that. And I think too, in terms of, because Ihsan, you touched on grief, and I feel like one of the things that we need to do for our younger people, especially, and also for ourselves, is to create the space to be okay with being sad, which has already been mentioned, but I just want to reiterate that again. And that it's okay for us to be sad, and we shouldn't shame each other for that. One of the things I have found, especially in doing a lot of group work, is that we are ashamed for our natural human responses to life. And especially as Black people, like, I started the work that I do because I feel like we need to embrace the full scope of our human experience, and the full scope of our human experience includes our emotional responses. Without incorporating that into my life, I'm dehumanizing a part of myself. I refuse to participate in that because that's what allows that system of white supremacy and racism to win. And that's me internalizing it. So I think it's also very important to like be open to have emotions because we're human beings. It's a default of being human. And I guess I'll share in terms of like my own like experiences. And I shared some of this recently, and I think this may turn into part of my podcast when I get there, in sharing some of my own poetry. I have, most of my life, I've had various dualities of experiences. And they have been burdens at times. Like for one example I'll share is knowing what it's like to have your friends murdered, and to know the concerns around gun violence and like what that looks like in a city. And at the same time, I know what it's like to grow up with rifles in the house, and that's just regular. So a lot of my life experiences have been these very extreme polar opposites, and it's been a lot to work through. You know, I've been through a lot of different toxic and crazy relationship experiences. One of the poems I shared recently, I shared that like, I know what it feels like to have somebody's hands around my neck, and I'm looking in their eyes and thinking like, this person might kill me. You know, to be so drunk and or high that like I have no idea where I am or how I'm going to get home, and I just hope that I can stumble down the street just to get to my door. And then on the flip of some of those experiences, like knowing what it's like to be treated like a queen in a relationship and to be honored and valued and respected, even though I'm still single, but that's a whole nother dynamic. We're going to talk about that. But like, or like also to have full agency over who I am, you know, and to have full agency and control over my own body, whether that's due to substances or due to people doing things to me. And so I share that just to say, like, knowing what it's like to be in a deep, dark space that feels helpless and hopeless, and knowing also like the process it is to like move beyond that and move through that to get to that place of feeling like you're thriving, to like literally have joy in my life today, and to feel happy about who I am, and to feel enjoy my own company. You know, it's been a journey. Like I joke a lot of times, but seriously, like I don't wake up like this. Like there's a lot of steps for me to get this bubbly
every
like,
day, right?
People ready, like you
every
know,
day.
It's a journey, you know. This
Yeah.
and I live the journey, you know. You know, and so like also like what Brittany shared too, like I know what so many different experiences are like, and because like who I am today, I haven't always been this person. It's been a lot of work. I even recently shared some photos that showed like who I was like about 10 years ago. And like, I was a very different person, and I put in a lot of work. But what I will say when it comes to like the work of like healing and growth and development is that when you're in pain, you're going to be in pain until you do something. It takes work to stay stuck in emotional pain. It takes work to heal and to get free, to feel emotionally free. So one of the things I found is that when you're in that pain, but you're actively working on growth and you're working on accepting like this is the reality of how I feel and like what has happened in my life, that's what sets you up to be able to move beyond the pain. The pain won't last forever, but it just feels like it will last forever if you're stuck in it and you're not taking any action. So I just want to like put that out there to promote that, like to take the action. And yeah, you might not know what that feels like yet in terms of the result or the emotional freedom. But if you try it, if you give yourself a chance, look at it like this: you're going to be in pain either way. So you might as well give yourself the chance to experience a result that can reach a space of like emotional freedom. And when you experience it, then you know it's possible. And then that will motivate you to continue to move forward.
That was so powerful, Jenni.
Oh,
I
no
love
kidding.
you. I'm blown away.
Thank you.
I love the dueling. Like that's so amazing. Wow.
You and I were totally connecting more after this. I'm like,
Oh yeah. I'm like, I was like,
Yeah, how do I follow that?
Yeah.
I totally felt all of that. That was amazing. Not in the same way,
Yeah.
but you know, the duality is wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
we'll chat.
So we all, you know, come to this work in particular with a story. You know, we all come into our lives with our own stories, but certainly we know that those of us who go into mental health, you know, have most likely chosen to work out some story. And, you know, Ihsan, as you were talking about the death of Chadwick Boseman, just this week, you know, it touches such a part of me because about 10 years ago, my brother had colon cancer. He has survived, but 5 years later, my sister died to alcoholism, which is really in parallel to, my childhood. She was following in the footsteps of my father, who didn't die from alcoholism, but very, very much died from interrelated causes. He was a war veteran. He drank a lot when I was a kid. We left because he drank a lot. When I was 8 years old, I think we finally left, and I remember that journey in the back of the car. Certain songs kind of hit me too, from the early 80s, from car rides like that, trying to escape some of that early story. So, just to circle that back to what you were talking about, Ihsan, with grief, that this whole pandemic really just resonates with everybody's grief, and that is a universal experience. Grief and loss are just rampant, no matter what level of kind of social dialogue you're being hit with in terms of what those losses are. Job losses, school losses, let alone living right in the center of a metropolitan city where racial violence is just enacted left and right. And I'm raising two kids right here who are now teenagers. One's doing college from home, and it terrifies me and inspires me as well. Just like we were reflecting on earlier, this young generation really approaches life in a very different way, and so I'm really proud and glad to see that through, and to be part of a community with them, and they've kind of guided me and my husband in so many ways in terms of really living a life where diversity matters, and we don't have to create false boundaries around that. And we can speak into the injustices just at our local neighborhood and city level to try and be part of the change that matters. But to come back around to kind of where I'm at with the shutdown and kind of managing my own sense of self and feeling and purpose during this time when everybody's kind of filled with uncertainty and unease. What kind of world are we going to wake up to when we can actually see each other live and in person again? In some ways, the experiences of my early childhood, I am built for this kind of shutdown. I have a lot of resilience because of the way that I navigated the world of my parents and the havoc that alcohol wreaked on my family as a child. I am a very typical adult child of an alcoholic. I was the middle child who looked straight ahead, put her head down, drew in my sketchbook and said, I am going to get through this one way or another. I'm going to get good grades. I'm going to find my way in the world. That was not without its many ups and downs through high school and college. I left home at 17 to kind of figure out college on my own, but I do have some other family supports that did get me through that as well. But there was certainly a moment of decision where I needed to do things on my own. So this pandemic, just recapitulates those grief and loss cycles. And yet, I've done a lot of the work, and I continue to do a lot of the work, as Jenni was reflecting on. And I really believe so much in resiliency, that we can kind of pull from those dark aspects of our lives and really find the light and find the joy. And art has been at the center of that for me. And I've really been delving into that in my isolation. Sean, I love your image of cocooning. I think that we all need moments where we do that. And it's not an avoidance. It's really about, it might be avoiding some things in the outside world, but it's really about being so in touch with yourself and getting to that dark shadow stuff that Brittany was referring to, and being in touch with it and drawing it out into the light. And so my art practice has, I've really been able to lean into that during this shutdown and be more in touch with it. Working from home, one of the benefits has been that my art desk, which is not a full studio, but it's down the hall from my desk where I see clients, and so I've been able to really tap into that a lot through the shutdown, and it's been just really such a rich resource. And then really tapping into not only my own sense of self as an artist, but sense of self in a community of artists that I kind of ignored for a long time. It's really easy when even deciding to be an art therapist and stay kind of rooted in an art-centered world, you're still working in a world that's a little bit more clinical and a little bit more day-to-day running a business. And so I never really saw myself deeply rooted in an art community other than local galleries and events, which I love, but I've really been exploring the wider world of art. And in doing that, really trying to unpack the colonialism and the lack of representation of women and people of color, but connecting to this thing that felt like it was sort of out of reach for me. And it shouldn't be. These are public places, public institutions that are funded by our public dollars. We should all, again, it goes back to that sense of voice that I think is so much a part of like when we learn to be agentic with what we make and do and say, and we need to figure out a process of getting there. And that can be so tied into a creative and imaginal process of whatever sort: poetry, music, dance, drama, theater, and of course, we are all highly invested in the visual arts, but that's such a rich place to find that sense of self and sense of voice. And so that's been my journey through this shutdown. How can I more effectively engage that for myself and share that in the community, and share that in the community of art therapy, where we can really elevate each other and elevate this practice. So, just to turn it back to you guys, thank you for really being part of that elevation and that willingness to explore it in a bigger way and share it with the community. It's really important.
Brittany.
So the trauma's out. What was the other question? You guys already heard.
I want to know.
Are we talking about the pandemic and like everything going on there?
Everything, which is people went to those different places, but I wanted to have you share some resources too.
Oh,
and,
okay.
If there's a website, and if there's any just final thoughts, you can go where you want with that, and then Lamar will speak.
Yeah, I think we're all healing our own wounds in one way or another, and yeah, everything everybody said is just really great. I also, work is not always conducive to human health and the way that it's set up either. So, I've been in the hospital doing the whole pandemic. So I've been, wearing mask over mask and doing therapy with Matt, like a whole big billowy like mask thing. So it's definitely been a process, but that's just for that. But as for resources, I feel like I always forget so much stuff whenever I'm doing this. But I can share, I work with an organization, as I think stated a little earlier, Arts Club New York City. They do offer the art therapy box. It comes with an art therapy session. And so I will be in the chat for everyone, posting a link where you can purchase one of those, and it contains a mask making directive, so you get to make your own mask, and on the exterior illustrate how you feel that others see you, and on the inside how you feel on the inside. And so that's a project, and that's open to you. Also, if you would DM me at Art Therapy Place, we are providing workshops, and they will be virtual workshops for Cases Center for Alternatives, which is an organization that does that works with people that are formerly incarcerated, or have some experience of incarceration, or come from communities affected by mass incarceration. So we are going to be doing workshops with them. So we're also taking donations where you can donate a box to a member of the groups that we'll be working with. So if you would, either email me at arttherapyinbushwick@gmail.com or DM Art Therapy Place. We can provide that information for you to either make the donation, or I will also be posting the Arts Club New York City link to their website, so you can check out the art therapy box and some of the other boxes that they have available, so that you can, as we were talking about doing some art therapy type stuff at home, those do give that opportunity. If you're having difficulty affording it, please reach out to me. I'll do my best to help with that factor as well. But we'll be having a virtual art exhibition coming up this month, as well as another art therapy workshop at over Zoom. So we'll be posting that on Art Therapy Place. Just follow.
Okay. I'll make sure that we share that info. There was one thing I wanted to say to Jenni. Jenni, you mentioned to me earlier that you wanted to share something with the public, the viewers, that they could perhaps do at home and share.
I was like, I did.
You did. That was your idea.
I did. You're right. I did say that. Yeah, I didn't have a specific thing in mind. I was just thinking, and like also would love if we could co-create this as art therapists and creative people here. I was just thinking, because I was actually a part of a podcast recently, and part of the thing is we just kind of came up with an art directive based on the context of the conversation. So I don't know, I think we've touched on a lot of different things around self-care, around permission to be yourself, empowerment, identity, grief. So I don't know, those are just some of the themes that came up. So I don't know if anyone feels there's a theme that came up more prevalent than others, or that we feel there would be a thread through the conversation that was a theme that maybe we can come up with a simple art directive for people. So I don't know if we want to just identify a theme first.
A couple of visual themes that came up were sort of the dark and the light, the cocoon or a safe place.
Oh, now I am in a cocoon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, that brings me throwback. Does everybody remember in grad school doing all the box directives? Mm-hmm. And everyone's ordering stuff these days, so you probably have a box.
Boxes. Get into your recycle bin and pull out a box.
Yeah. So maybe that might be interesting, and just I think also an interesting kind of even to piggyback, Brittany, what you were talking about, the mask. I love mask making stuff too. Mm-hmm. It might be interesting to take an opportunity. And this could be a family project, is to have everyone selects a box, and on the inside of the box to put things that maybe are the idea of creating a safe space, or a space that feels comfortable, or maybe a space that represents a person's internal sense of self that maybe they don't always share with the external world. And people could do that by using you can use actual collage and art materials, but I also have been encouraging people to get creative in terms of other things that are around in your home, whether those are maybe you have paper plates that have an interesting design on them and cutting those up, or maybe you have paper towels that have a design on them. Thinking about using cardboard from toilet paper rolls and paper towel rolls. Maybe you have some lids to Tupperware that you don't know where the bottoms are, and you can use those plastic pieces, because a lot of times the lids are different colors.
Or even lids from a peanut butter jar.
Yeah.
I leave those things.
Yeah, labels, boxes, cereal boxes, oatmeal boxes. I don't know why I'm thinking breakfast, but just think about what's in your environment, and even the inside of the box you may actually want to put items that have personal meaning inside of there. And then also to decorate the outside of the box, thinking about what is the thing that keeps people away from you, or you could think about what is it that other people see on the outside that is different from the inside. So just this concept of the internal and the external, and tying in the cocoon. So that's my thought and idea. So
I love that idea. I think
also Pinterest.
Pinterest.
If you want to do an art therapy project and you're just trying to find one you think that you'd like to do that day, you can Pinterest art therapy, and they'll have templates and different things that you can use. I think, not to give away all the tricks, but Pinterest is a good place to go look if you want to find out what they are.
For the purpose of this conversation, what I'm going to offer is if anybody does create anything out there from our audience, if you submit a photo of it, if you're comfortable sharing it, I'll make sure that we post it to the MBK Cares Facebook page. And I'm also offering a t-shirt to the first 5 people who submit that MBK Cares t-shirt. So we would like to partner with these different art therapists on here for some projects. I had some phenomenal ideas of how we could work to financially support your organizations so that we could bring you to our audience. I think that Jenni and Brittany, you seem like you're interested in collabing. So I really would like to see how you two connect and then partner up with what you want to do. Kathryn, as I said before, we would love to get involved with you in the school system. And Sean,
Absolutely, I'm in on that.
we could support what you're doing. It takes all of us in order to pull these things off. Lamar?
Yeah. I want to thank the panel for joining tonight. I really appreciate, hearing, you guys sharing your story and also sharing the resources. Happy birthday, Ihsan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for
events.
thanks for providing this platform. And I want to thank the viewers. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And then next week, please join us for another discussion around the topic Black Brotherly Love, and it's going to be hosted by Eric Marsh. So thank you, everybody.
Mark, one last thing I want to make sure we don't forget that this upcoming week is also Suicide Prevention Week. So anybody out there, even if you're a caretaker or somebody who's an advocate for mental health, take care of yourself. Last year, we were devastated the week that Suicide Prevention Week landed, where the week started off with 2 suicides from a pastor of a mega church in California and then the director of the Penn Therapy Department. So I don't want to take for granted the people we have on this panel or anybody else out there who's an advocate. Take care of yourself and ask questions of people going through different transitions out there. This is the week that my brother died. My brother died August 31st, 2007. This organization was started in his memory, and we don't forget that these hard times, they cause some people to live in dark places. So thank you all. Lamar, you did a phenomenal job tonight. All of y'all did, and I appreciate you all. Thank you to our Facebook audience as well. Lamar, did you want to say anything?
Nope, that's it, man.
Can we do corny, but a round of applause?
Sean, I didn't know doing dishes was art. I've been making masterpieces since I was like 10.
All day, every day.
All right, y'all. Thank you, America. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for having us.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Have a peaceful night.
Thank you so much.